Everyone's watched Jujutsu Kaisen. Everyone's watched Demon Slayer. Congratulations, you have a Crunchyroll account. But while you were rewatching the Shibuya arc for the 5th time, some of the hardest action anime ever made were sitting in the corner getting no love. Peak animation, insane fight choreography, zero hype. Today, we're fixing that. These are the most underappreciated action anime you're probably sleeping on, and by the end of this video, your watch list is gonna hate me. Let's get into it. Back in the 2010s, it felt as if anthropomorphizing things was the cool thing with browsers and collectible card games. Those who were around at that time would have heard of the Kantai collection, and modern fans are more familiar with Azure Lane. There's also a female-oriented version of it featuring swords called Touken Ranbu. It's a pretty big franchise, big enough to be a phenomenon with lots of collaborations and multiple anime productions. Gatsugeki Touken Ranbu from 2017 is quite a serviceable entry for the franchise. It's one of the lesser-known UFO table titles, but you can still see the team's artistic pedigree at play here. The action scenes are pretty cool, and for what it is, it's a fine watch that I enjoyed. I do think it's something better watched by someone who's already into the franchise. There's potential with the plot that ultimately didn't translate too well for those who were coming in blind. Regardless, if you're in for the very traditional samurai aesthetic and more UFO table, then this one will work. Touken Ranbu was quite the marketing juggernaut for a time, but I don't know anyone else who really watched Angolmois. Angolmois is doomed to be an anime buried in obscurity. It's rated R historical fiction portraying a lesser-known era, and it aired alongside what I think is the best season of Attack on Titan. Oh, and there's also an Overlord and Gintama season, and you have things like Cells at Work and Banana Fish for the new shows at that time. However, Angolmois is one gripping war story that chronicles the Mongol invasion of the 1274. It's a change of pace from typical shows, being a series that embraces its identity as a straightforward war drama using its realism as a selling point. Depicting war in such a non-glamorous way isn't exactly everyone's cup of tea, especially in a medium such as anime. Still, when anime hits the mark with it like with Vinland Saga, the results are spectacular. Angolmois may not be something that resonated with a lot of people when it aired, but those who want a rather intriguing war drama with samurai can really give it a shot. Next up is Brave 10. When it comes to samurai anime, so many of them are set in the Sengoku period or the Meiji Restoration. Brave 10 from 2012 is the former, chronicling the journeys of the two main characters, the masterless ninja Saizo and the priestess Izanami. Together, they go through the war-torn lands in search of brave warriors, and along the way, encounter some familiar faces that you'll recognize if you've brushed up on your Japanese history. I'm talking guys like Date Masamune, Hattori Hanzo, and the like. For a time, there's no shortage of Sengoku-era anime. It definitely wasn't as ubiquitous as the notorious genres and the flavors of the year nowadays, but for a time, anything major with a historical backdrop will have no problem naming folks like Nobunaga. Obviously, more targeted to girls like Touken Ranbu was, Brave 10 is one of the more niche titles from that subgenre and could be worth a shot. This thing doesn't need more episodes to become better though, if I'm to be honest with you. Mushibugyo is our next entry on the list. Now we're talking. We've had heavily historically inclined titles, so it's about time we inject some major fantasy into the mix. This time the stage is Edo, where giant insects terrorize the land. To deal with them, people call on the insect magistrates. Unfortunately, their master swordsman is unable to answer the call, and his son Jinbi gets sent instead. Determined to restore the honor of the family, he carries his fiery determination into battle, looking to rid the world of the insect infestation once and for all. Mushibugyo was a show that generally slipped under the radar back in 2013, but I've heard inklings of discussions every now and then about it. Out of curiosity, I decided to check it out and found myself watching a pretty entertaining anime. Sword fights against monsters and samurai in a kind of historical context, but with all the heavier fantasy elements, some fan service here and there. It's all my cup of tea. It takes a while to get going though, but it's one of the more underrated titles from that year when all's said and done. Onihai graces us with its presence on the list. Onihai, what's that? I don't blame y'all. If there's a series that's emblematic of a marketing disaster, then It's gotta be this one. Poor marketing, poor distribution, competing against big shows like Yojo Senki and Konosuba Season. Maybe the anime team saw the writing on the wall and just phoned it in for a series that didn't look like it will sell. Which is a big shame, you know, because if there's one thing Onihai shows, it's that the show's got a stylistic approach that you won't get in typical mainstream anime. The few who watched it have compared it to Law & Order, as it's an episodic cop serial with samurai that offers a rich trove of stories to tell. Onihai really looked like an abandoned project, but it still provides quite a unique and creative approach to the classic samurai tales we've come to love in anime. It has an approach that goes against the grain, and while that may not have earned its profits, it's sure to get some fans to applaud the effort. Since we're on the topic with mature samurai anime, maybe we can also take some time to look at Shigurui. An even more niche anime, Shigurui doesn't mince words. While it's not completely historically accurate, it still remains a tense tale of the Edo period, a time that, contrary to popular belief, wasn't all dramatic love stories and magical kingdoms. It's every bit as unforgiving as a lot of the turbulent periods in Japanese history, and this is a show that pushes those ideas out into the forefront. While our previous entry has been compared to Law & Order, this one has made apt comparisons to a classical theatrical play. What with the music, the overall ambiance and vibes of the show, and whatnot. Shigurui isn't something that can be easily digested, and it's best enjoyed if you've done a bit of homework regarding Japanese history. Still, I feel it deserves some shout-outs for how artistic and sophisticated it looks. It doesn't look like something you'll get from anime, but here it is. Following that, we have Hakuoki. Honestly, Hakuoki is one of my first exposures to the otome game adaptation genre, so with that in mind, I've got quite a soft spot for it. The romantic tale featuring the Shinsengumi and the main cast trials has a little of everything for everyone. Its intended audience of teenage girls would love the cast of pretty boys and the romance, and those who prefer history and action would also have many things to like. Throw in some supernatural vampiric elements and high drama involving that aspect of the story, and you've got a rather underrated adaptation that I believe stands well on its own. Although playing the video games will give you a better grasp of the content. Hakuoki's plot wraps up quite conclusively after its 2 seasons, but it's also a franchise that spawns so many ways to enjoy the story. The compilation movies aren't bad, and there are lots and lots of supplementary OVAs. It truly was one of the more breakout otome series in the 2010s, even if the genre is arguably niche. Blade of the Immortal comes up next on the list. Blade of the Immortal is a samurai drama that tells of a swordsman cursed with immortality after having slain 100 innocent men. He then goes on a journey of redemption, all the while partnering up with a girl seeking revenge for her parents' murders. It's a dynamic setting you might have already been familiar with, but Blade of the Immortal never puts its eggs in the basket of being completely original and devoid of tropes. Heck, with it being a 90s manga, it may as well have helped in pioneering those very same tropes we've come to know in samurai period dramas. It's an adaptation of a manga famous for its spectacular artwork, and that much has partially been translated into anime with its 2019 adaptation. While it may not be a masterclass in visuals and animation, the art gets the point across rather well. It provides a great way for watchers to get the vibes of the show. It's quite grim, a bit more violent than expected, and has a whole lot of drama. Something like Shigurui comes to mind as a comparison, so you can try watching the two back to back and tell me which one you like more. We have a classic on our way now with Samurai 7. I don't know about you, but if there's one thing I associate with Studio Gonzo, it's how they seem to have a knack for these sci-fi adventure stories that have a distinct art and CG style. There's a visual flair that somehow seems shared by their numerous titles. I'm talking about things like Gantz, Last Rita, Last Exile, Aokana, and the like. It's not all sci-fi for these guys, but I have somehow been trained to associate them with those kinds of titles. Samurai 7, an anime retelling of the legendary's 50s film Seven Samurai, is no exception, telling us the story of mechanized samurai who have integrated technology into their bodies. Integrating the sci-fi aspects here feels like a change done for the sake of novelty, and I'd say it works out fine if we're going with that rule of cool. It may be easy to pass off Samurai 7 as a product of its time, with it being a 2-decade-old show that only really had modest popularity. It takes a while to get really good, and when put alongside the original film material, kind of feels like a miss. However, it's also got some pretty good action, and it had some shining moments of amazing art. Feel free to try it and see an image of early 2000s Gonzo. 1993. The anime landscape was completely different back in those days. Ninja Scroll looked every bit the part of an anime movie coming from the early 90s. It looked dated. It feels like a B-movie in anime form, and it's every bit as enjoyable as a movie held together by the exciting fights that keep coming at you one after the other. It's definitely a fun ride, a popcorn flick in every sense of the word, and that's perfectly fine. It's pretty much what you'd expect from an era where anime was very far from where it is now, when spectacle trumps everything, and there's not much a typical anime fan wanted other than the visual stimulation from cool fights featuring swordsmen and ninjas with powers beating the hell out of each other. Ninja Scroll definitely is a product of its time, a relic from an era when you probably weren't even born. It's not exactly a masterpiece that holds up in the year 2024, but it's got a whole lot of enjoyable moments if you're the type who craves fight scenes that don't hold back. Maybe a more familiar name or to shake things up a little bit now. Here's Sengoku Basara. I don't know what it's like nowadays, but when it comes to Sengoku era anime, Sengoku Basara was the go-to anime of the genre at one point. The Warring States period has had a whole plethora of inspired works, but Sengoku Basara is the one that plays things completely straight, virtually at least. The warlords have designs that really evoke the feelings of what people expect from such a storied time in history, and the dynamic between them was a treat for those who did their bit of reading up on Japanese history. Still, I'm not about to say that the show is realistic, because it's the opposite. What we have are some epic showcases of power, amazing flexes, and powers that simply defy physics and logic. Just as you'd expect from an action anime meant to depict these historical figures as even more of badasses than their actual counterparts were. Still, with this being a game adaptation, it's an anime that's meant for a certain crowd of fans. I can't help but feel that it's one of those media mix attempts at getting new fans into the games, and I think that it worked to a certain degree. Still, you can like it as someone who's never played the games, but your enjoyment will definitely increase if you've already acquainted yourself with the franchise beforehand. Just make sure to come in with the right expectations, because these aren't the warlords you know from history. Basilisk makes an appearance. Basilisk is likely not a title that evokes feelings of a samurai ninja drama that's intended for a more mature audience. It caught me by surprise at first too, when I found out that this anime is pretty much a bloody Romeo and Juliet style story of forbidden love, one that's entwined with a story of clans out for each other set in ancient Japan. It's quite a simple, if not bloody and serious plot that you probably would stay with for the spectacle. Basilisk as an anime has visuals as its strongest point in my opinion. The animation may not be anything to write home about, but the art and how the action scenes get depicted really emphasize the mood of the show. Along with the voice acting, the art direction does sell the premise of the show and its affinity for brutality quite hard. The anime knows the kind of story it wants to tell, and the sound and art direction don't betray it one bit. Oh, and it's got a banger opening that you may or may not have heard somewhere. It's quite popular for a song that started out as an opening for a very niche anime. Next up is a similar title, Drifters. No, Drifter doesn't have a premise that's similar to Basilisk. However, what the two share in common is just how hard they can get with the violence. Instead of infusing the high-octane action within a story of forbidden love, Drifters plays things more like an isekai, a story where Shimazu finds himself pulled into a world of political turmoil, encountering other legendary and historical figures like the notorious Nobunaga. It's a dark fantasy tale that pits those legendary figures together as they fight to protect the world from destruction. Drifters is a fast-paced action show that's all about adrenaline. Since it's from the guy who gave us Hellsing, this much is to be expected. It's a show that thrives on the rule of cool like Sengoku Basara, but in slightly different ways. It's something that you don't take seriously, and if you just sit back and watch it as all hell breaks loose, you'll have a blast with this show. It's only fitting we follow that with Afro Samurai. If you haven't had enough of the carnage, may I introduce to you the next title to satisfy your hunger. Afro Samurai is basically what many full-throttle action fans dream anime is like. It pulls no punches with the action, has a serviceable plot that's easy to follow, and resolves things pretty quickly. As we go through those 5 episodes, we get treated to something that's oozing with style. Afro Samurai looks nothing like any of its peers back in 2007, and to some extent, the same can hold true to this day, even with the advent of the Western anime productions courtesy of Netflix. There's also a notable dub cast for the show with Hollywood A-listers, so you better go check it out if you're curious. Afro Samurai is perfect for someone who wants an anime that they can finish in one sitting. With only 5 episodes, it isn't that much of a time investment, and it's full of the gory action scenes that some people just can't get enough of.
You ready to die like your pappy?
I'd like to give some love to Sword of the Stranger. Sword of the Stranger, for me, is one of the anime movies that defined the late 2000s. To some, it was a movie that came out of nowhere, but to me, it's a testament to how great anime can be in creating a very intriguing narrative that pays homage to its origin country's tradition. Set in historical Japan, this story tells of a mismatched pair's journey as they traverse the perilous lands of Japan, with a particular swordsman setting his sights on our orphan and Ronin duo. You can immediately tell that Sword of the Stranger was a big-time production. Much love is being given to the presentation and the delivery of the characters. Its plot may be simple, but that's because it's merely a way to drive the scenes forward, a way to bridge us into numerous heartfelt moments and jaw-dropping action sequences featuring some of the best sword fighting you'll get in anime. It is by all means something akin to a modern classic, one of the best anime movies you'll get from the 2000s. Now, if you're a gamer, you've probably wanted to log out of the real world and live inside a game, right? Well, Akira Uno literally does the same, except he doesn't get to choose the game or the character. But that is for the best, and here's why. Akira Uno chases a random girl and defeats her just like another NPC. He realizes he has no idea why he's even there. Now, he's just on a random quest to find out who's messing with him. This anime is a huge, messy dumpster fire, and that's exactly what makes it so much fun to watch. It's like the show took all of its cringy, over-the-top ideas you made when you were just 13, threw them in a blender, and hit start. The main character is the dumb yet overpowered guy made as an edgy teenager, and watching him try to deal with his own embarrassing creations is just peak comedy. It's a self-aware, cringy, goofy, and unserious story, but with cool, overpowered moments, which makes it one of the best underappreciated action anime with OPMC. Imagine you've got a whole kingdom at your feet, but instead of ruling it, you're plotting to sell it for what? Vacation fund? That's Prince Ween. He's more interested in chilling rather than being the king, and he's got a sell everything for profit plan going on. But with this absurd plan and his ridiculously overpowered schemes, he ends up saving the kingdom he couldn't care less about. It defines how to run a kingdom, not just in an average way. Nah-uh. When you're Prince Wayne, this man could run a kingdom without even trying. When it comes to realist heroes being on caffeine and a side of snark, Prince Wayne is the ultimate example. He's the type of guy who's against the hustle culture, and the way his lazy plans do wonders is one of the best things about this anime. With a lot of political drama that feels like a chess game and tons of hilarious characters, the show isn't just a comedy, it's peak. If you love stories with peaceful landscapes and lots of nature with an OPMC, you must watch The Genius Prince's Guide to Rising a Nation Out of Debt. Moving on, I want you to imagine you're a high school genius who survives a plane crash and boom! Enter a medieval world where you can't use your advanced skills to break everything. Now, Tsukasa Mikogami is your leader and he comes up with the best strategy, which is to chill so you don't break the universe with your advanced tech. But yes, in the world of high school prodigies, you're a legit prodigy. But despite your efforts to keep it chill, you're supposed to defeat an evil dragon. Piece of cake. This anime won't change the world, but it's super fun to watch them. Here's how. The smart high schoolers in a medieval world are majoring in what moment, and things get crazier with their mission to save this world without causing chaos. The characters are really lovable and smart, especially with their cute animal ears and tails. Seriously, I mean, who wouldn't love that? Other than the characters, the story mixes two worlds with a lot of hilarious moments. So if you're fond of hilarious stories with an overpowered bunch of teens, High School Prodigies is the one for you. What would you do if you could trade your memories for insane powers and an S-Class title? Deal done, right? Well, Kelvin does exactly that and tosses away his few brain cells for badass abilities and becomes the overpowered guy. But his Sigma aura increases even more as he falls for Melfina because, you know, why not pick the literal deity as your partner? Now, if we talk about how strong this guy is, I mean, he can take down monsters, level up, and make some serious OP contracts while not trying to embarrass himself in front of the goddess he's head over heels with. If you're tired of watching pure action anime and want an isekai now, then don't hesitate to watch Black Summoner. It's got all the usual stuff, including game mechanics, new friends joining the squad along with the harem vibe. There's kick-ass action, its characters have deep backstories with decent pacing so it doesn't drag on, you know, forever. So when it comes to some of the most underappreciated action anime with OPMCs, don't just lazily watch Black Summoner, but binge watch it.
まず一人。僕なら。おい、何があった？嘘だろ。
Imagine the gates of hell suddenly open and the demons run wild. That's exactly what Dolgar Scott went through, and I'm telling you, he didn't do anything to deserve it. When one of the demons attacks Scott's childhood friend Yuna, the legendary OP hero Sion Blandon shows up like Batman, but from a thrift store. Why? Because the guy immediately died by falling into a trap. Hilarious, right? But we're just getting started. Sion's necromancer sidekick Henri brings him back to life, but the real twist is that Dolgar's soul gets stuck in Sion's body. Now he has to be the big hero. When it comes to some of the most simplest action anime to watch, we can never leave out The Legendary Hero is Dead. It's dumb fun and it knows it. This show doesn't try to rush the story and keeps up a peaceful pace so the viewers can easily follow. Moreover, we've seen stories where the hero takes the wheel, but this anime kills the hero in the first episode, which makes the whole storyline even more interesting. It's sad how this anime is underappreciated because it's a really good story, no? If your life was isekai, but you started as the weakest class possible, like Monster Tamer Weak. That's Yuji for you, except the guy tames slimes and accidentally becomes a ridiculously overpowered sage and still tries to stay low-key. With the world-ending dangers in this new world, this corporate burnout might have to stop pretending and start saving his new home of slimes. Yuji, with the purpose of killing slimes, unlike his desk job, starts living for the thrills. My isekai life is the kind of anime that perfectly embraces its absurdity and decides to run with it. On the upper surface, it may look like your typical typical isekai with an OPMC. What makes it special is how hilarious it is. The animation is overused again and again. The dialogues repeat and the sound effects feel so bad, especially if you're someone who hates the sound of chewing. It's like watching a parody of Reincarnated as a Slime and every generic isekai anime there is. But let's not forget its satisfying moments and the laugh out loud absurdity, because who doesn't like laughing? Have you ever seen a demon wannabe? Like a human hero trying to become the demon king? Well, we have. Let's talk about Helk, a hero who hates humans, and Varmirio, one of the demon lords who doesn't trust him at all. But he can't get rid of him either because he's just ridiculously overpowered and popular. As humans start to disappear, Varmirio tries to find Helk's true intention before it's way too late for the demon world. Now, if you love drama and a lot of great action, Helk is the one for you. It has that light-hearted comedy take on a fantastical world too, which makes things even more interesting. Other than that, our main hero just steals the spotlight. His personality, aura, and powers, everything about this guy is just mwah. And although its animation may not be the best, the story compensates with interesting characters, sneaky world building, and comedic moments. What truly sets Helk apart is that it flips the typical hero versus demon dynamic by presenting a human trying to take the throne of the next demon king. Like, can you imagine this? It's almost insane. So imagine you're a broke adventurer who gets yeeted by a dragon but respawns as the weakest guy. How would you feel? Probably pretty terrible, right? That's exactly what happens to Rent Feina, a once low-ranking adventurer who's now grinding monster XP like it's an MMORPG, trying to level up into a vampire because being human 2.0 is a vibe. But here's the catch. He's got a permanent mask to hide his skeleton. Now, you know what makes the Unwanted Undead Adventurer one of the most underappreciated anime with OPMC? It's got that slow chill vibe where you get to know the characters and world at a decent pace, and it really lets you sink into the main character's journey. Even though it may be slow, it works because you're together with him in every thought and then deep dive into his character, which makes it pretty satisfying. Kid you not, you've probably been sleeping on one of the best anime out there. This one where the MC is so OP that you think that the writer gave him all the cheat codes. That's Hero of Maoyu for you. Alright, we're talking about a hero ready to take on the Demon Queen's castle and save the day, but instead of fighting the evil overlord he's supposed to, he's hit with a massive plot twist that the Demon Queen isn't evil. She's just a fragile lady who needs heroes' help to save the world. Maoyu is one of those anime that perfectly blends fantasy with real-life concepts. Like, you could literally see characters talking about the economy, agriculture, and even politics. While it might not be all about dough battles and flashy magic, it still does a great job of deeply exploring the complications of war and trade, much like Spice and Wolf if you've watched that one. You know what's the best part about Maoyu? Seeing Hero and the Demon Queen try to work together with the same goal in mind, despite being a total chaos due to being polar opposites. Differences aside, they somehow save the world. We're kicking things off with a video game adaptation, Tales of Zestiria the Cross. I remember back when this was aired in 2016, there was quite some hype for it, even more so than the usual video game adaptation around about this time. It ended up not having too much cultural footprint thanks to it sharing a season with Mob Psycho and having to contend with the second half of ReZero. Still, when it peaked in popularity, there was some chatter regarding this video game anime from a long-standing franchise. TZX is a show overall that Ufotable handled extremely well. They've been really awesome with their presentation as far as Unlimited Blade Works and another series we'll be talking about down the line, and they continue to show their pedigree with projects like this. While Tales of Zestiria has merely a serviceable story and, in my opinion, requires someone to be invested in the video games in order to fully enjoy it, staying for the pretty visuals, the great soundtrack, and the action doesn't sound so bad at all, right? At the end of the day, it's a show that entertains far more than you'd expect, especially for a series in the mid-2010s. Late 2012 was a different time. It was a time when anime was just starting to break into the mainstream, and the big headliners like Attack on Titan, One Punch Man or Jujutsu Kaisen weren't there to break the proverbial glass ceiling. There was a lot more niche work that looked like one and done stuff. At least that's how I perceived it when you look back. One such show was K, an original anime that got quite a bit of hype, and I do think that it certainly got that hype from looking unique. Now, I know what you're going to say when you look at the footage. The color filter, a Gohan signature, is definitely what I'd call hit or miss, and your mileage will vary on how well you can tolerate it. However, don't let that distract you from what I consider to be gorgeous art and animation for its era. The background work and how the action sequences got presented in this anime are just top notch, and they help complement an action/mystery story that doesn't fall short in making fans want more. Good news is that K Project found some success in its own right. We ended up getting a lot more sequels than everyone initially expected. It wasn't a one and done in the end. Rage of Bahamut was the Cygames IP in the days of old. Before Uma Musume, before Grand Blue Fantasy, and before Princess Connect. The dark fantasy aesthetic, harkening to the classic JRPGs of old, is really where it was for them. By all accounts, this supported glorified commercial to their game that they're trying to promote further should have been a passable yet forgettable anime, but it did way more than was expected, being another of the few video game adaptations that didn't suck. It's an anime that wowed people with its crisp visuals and an aesthetic that certainly fit the times. Remember, this was in 2014, just a year removed from when Attack on Titan took the world by storm and people craved the bleaker, sepia-toned fantasy worlds that did away with idealism. Rage of Bahamut would later get a sequel, also done by Mappa. That one was also pretty solid, and you should give both Rage of Bahamut shows a try. This could possibly be a controversial opinion, because Shangri-La Frontier being on this list of underappreciated anime would definitely feel wrong to some. It's certainly not an anime that's been buried into obscurity or anything like that, but part of me ponders about what could have been for this show. There's a lot to love about this anime, and while it's garnered quite a bit of popularity with how well produced it is, it deserves a bit more. That's just what I think, due to it being one of the best gaming anime out there, and in terms of visuals and animation, I'd say it's one of C2C's best works. With a catalogue boasting hits like Elena and Tsukimichi, shows that are no slouches in the visuals department, that is saying something. Still, this is no time to stay too long on this topic and lament on what ifs.
Good luck.
Gekkai Sensen, otherwise known as Blood Blockade Battlefront, was one of those defining shows with spice back in the mid-2010s. Urban fantasies featuring supernatural creatures and such are a dime a dozen. There's something special with how Gekkai Sensen goes about it. For one, there's a distinctive western flair to it, but that's to be expected when the one who brought us the source material is also the author of the 90s hit Trigun. For me, the strongest parts of Gekkai Sensen all involved its characters and the banter. There's just so much life and energy in it, and it's something that a lot of fans can truly appreciate. It's also visually stunning when it comes to the key sequences, and Bones did an excellent job with the art and animation. The slice of life approach where the plot seems to meander may not be to everyone's liking given the action genre of the show, but the anime is worth a shot if you enjoy these western aesthetic stories like the aforementioned Trigun or Bakano. Chinese anime typically don't get enough shine, for obvious reasons. The marketing just isn't there, there are numerically not too many of them to make it internationally, and they're easy to pass off as more amateur than their more mainstream counterparts from Japan. One great show that seems to have broken that barrier of obscurity is King's Avatar, largely thanks to the competitive gaming craze still going strong and people on the internet comparing it to a popular title like Sword Art Online. In its own right, however, King's Avatar has a lot going for it, as it's one of my first exposure to an anime that tackles the esports esports side of things. Far too often, gaming anime tend to either be about being trapped inside a game or just hanging out and chilling with friends over MMOs and the like. It's not every day we get exposed to the glamorous and less than glamorous sides of professional gaming, both the thrills of competition and honing your skills, as well as the ugly side of internal politics within esports organizations. King's Avatar is worth a shot even if you're not the type who's into gaming. You can enjoy it for the character dynamics and be invested with our main character's journey to rise to the top once more. The recently concluded Wisteria Wand and Sword deserves a shout out here. On paper, Wisteria is a story we've all seen and loved already. Heck, Mashal came out not too long ago, but what I'd like to reference is Black Clover, which happens to share a director with Wisteria. While Black Clover has had a rocky start and a polarized reception, one thing we can't deny is that the show does fight scenes spectacularly. It's riddled with a lot of awesome and memorable moments, thanks in large part to the way those events got translated into anime format. You'll see more of that excellence in Wisteria, where pretty much every episode has an incredible action sequence. If you're looking for an action series to watch that's still very fresh in the community's minds, Wisteria is my pick for you. Definitely go for it if you're a sucker for eye-catching fight scenes. I do think it's a thing to write home about, even if the plot and characters all veer towards familiar territory for seasoned anime fans. Another Chinese anime on this list, Blades of the Guardians, is one that I bet most anime fans don't know about. Unlike the previously discussed King's Avatar, this one unfortunately doesn't have much of a marketing push behind it, whether from execs or online personalities. It's not hard to see why either. Historical series have a specific niche, and even the more successful ones have fan bases that pale in comparison to the actual blockbusters. Needless to say, the world of Chinese anime has a lot of hidden gems, and series tucked away that I've seen since the onset of the decade. Blades of the Guardians is one such anime, being an action-filled production that blends fantasy and history. It's got some great production value that far exceeds what one would expect out of a niche work that no one really knows about, and if you're up for watching some Chinese anime that's not set in the modern era, then I would definitely recommend this one for you. First impressions are very important in anime, and Undead Unluck sure did a hell of a great job making an impression. Starting off with a very interesting premise and peppering it with some astounding action scenes seemed to have worked out pretty well for it. The cool thing with Undead Unluck is that, unlike some shows that peak in the first episode or two, the ride doesn't end there. Throughout the anime's run of engaging arcs after another, it never quite lost its edge in the animation department, and it sure delivered on its promise of crazy, unadulterated fun. The over-the-top fight scenes really work for what the anime is trying to achieve, fitting in the niche of late 2023's crass, morbid yet equally charming shonen series. Just the kind of sit back and watch explosions while eating popcorn type of entertainment that won't hurt to have in a world where a lot of shonen anime feel like they take themselves too seriously. It's the distribution model that clipped the show in its wings from becoming more popular. If it had better distribution among streaming services, it would have gotten more recognition than it actually did. Right off the bat, something sticks out for Katanagatari. It's the art style that carries with itself a design choice that you don't see in anime every day. Set in Edo-era Japan, this show can be summed up as one of the possible precursors to the modern wuxia tales that you often see these days. It's an adventure show that's quite wordy and features some characters who excel in playing their roles. The episodic and very dialogue-focused nature of the show may not exactly be for everyone, but it certainly gives us something that was very different in its era, and I dare say still holds up to the modern day. But don't be fooled, however. When it comes to the action sequences, Katanagatari manages to excel thanks to its stylish flair and the interesting story and world that it builds through said episodes. It's not flawless, but Katanagatari is just that uniquely quirky show that takes you on an adventure that you won't forget. Let me pull up the credits for Sirius the Jaeger. PA Works? Something like this is definitely not the first thing that comes in my mind whenever I heard PA Works, but after watching it, I did enjoy it. As I mentioned earlier, vampire anime tend not to always be a kill the vampires fair like Seraph of the End. Karin and the recently aired Vampire Dies in No Time are comedies. Vampire Night definitely isn't mainly about killing the vampires. Sirius the Jaeger falling into the category would set the viewer up for some expectations right off the bat. Overall, I think that it generally sticks to the tropes and story beats of such a title. You have the expected twists and all, but it just works. I find it plain but enjoyable and passable entertainment. It's probably boosted by the spectacular art quality actually. PA Works does it again with its pedigree for visual production, beautifully packaging everything in a setting and ambiance that feels quite unique for these let's kill vampires ensemble shows. Sirius the Jaeger's a pretty cool attempt by PA to branch out into the genre. Is it the best in their catalogue of memorable shows though? I don't think so, but it's still a pretty good popcorn show to binge over a weekend. Super Crooks is a show that relishes in its Western energy, which translates pretty well in anime format. It's got the whole heroes and villains set up down pat, and it's full of characters who are both lovable and a joy to follow. The enjoyment gets ramped up with how great the presentation was compared to my expectations. The voice acting is great, the art's perfect for the mood of the story, and the plot generally flows well and is easy to consume. It feels like watching one of those Hollywood blockbusters in the realm of, say, Kick-Ass, but in anime form. Some quick, wild fun to pass time over a weekend. If those things are to your liking, Super Crooks might be the show to satisfy your cravings. Honestly speaking, it was a bit hard to sell Decadence at first, I think mainly due to its premise. Monsters forcing people to bunker up in a dystopian setting? How many of those Attack on Titan-like shows have we had already? Luckily though, Decadence has a lot of good things going for it that sets itself apart from those shows with similar premises. First off, it's an original anime, so when watching, I had almost no expectations. The eventual plot twist did catch me off guard, and it was after then I realized how brilliant some of them were. It started off as a dystopian fight for a survival thing, but it made good use of its short 12-episode airtime to evolve the show into something way beyond that by the time everything's said and done. And at the end of it all, it's a sci-fi show that transcends the initial action genre and offers some cool philosophical insights. Decadence got overshadowed by the blockbusters and sequels it aired beside, but this is a true underrated gem that you just have to watch. At first glance, BNA looks like a superhero show with furries in an urban fantasy setting. After watching it, I'd say that it's got a lot underneath the surface, and it explores a lot of themes that I didn't expect to get tackled. Political themes, sociological ones, conspiracies. It's got a lot more than it initially suggests, but we're not here primarily for those now, are we? We're here to have some action and some fights to get the energy going, and I'm pleased to say that BNA still has those elements in droves. It's rightfully fast-paced for a superpowered mystery action, and it's exciting in the sheer potential of where the adventure can take you. It's also got that trigger thing with revolting against the system as seen as Kill La Kill and Gurren Lagann, and while I'd say that those two did that aspect of the story better, BNA is no slouch either. Trigger rarely disappoints, and while BNA probably won't end up at the top of their greatest hits, it is a nice short show that's well worth your time.
了解
Now, I've often talked about Vivi, and I still do. That's because in the realm of sci-fi with a bit of those musical element backdrops, I widely consider it one of the best the anime industry has to offer, especially in the modern era. There's a lot to like about Vivi: the character development, the fluidity of the art and animation, the progression of the story, and of course, the fights. I often find it being compared to Tacked-Opt, but let's face it, if you have time to go for either of the two, Vivi's probably the more complete show for most people. Vivi has some themes that strike hard with how the world is going now, and it's one of the very few successful titles to drive home the themes regarding the dangers of technology. With a strong backdrop of real-world relevant theme, amazing sound direction, and fights that are nothing short of wild and awesome that you just automatically ignore some of the sequences that don't make sense, Vivi is a surefire hit that's perfect for you to binge. Let's go back to old school stuff with probably my era's poster child for edgy psychological titles. Made infamous for its gore and stuff that makes your heart pound for the wrong reasons, I'd say the Elfen Lied has managed to carve out quite the legacy for itself. It's quite the polarizing title by combining those off-putting aspects with an arguably strong story that couldn't have worked without them. It's got stuff in it like discrimination and humanity as themes, while putting everything against the hauntingly memorable soundtrack and atmosphere. Does the show have to go through the lengths of showcasing gore and nudity to achieve the effect? Probably not, but with the route it decided to go, I'd say that the anime team did a pretty damn good job at using those elements to prop up the feel of the show. An oldie yet a goodie. Elfen Lied could be your show to watch. I hope you haven't had enough of Heroes yet, because this right here is an awesome show. The premise starts out pretty simple once you've got the meat of it. Grandpa has been going through tough days, and as fate would have it, he gets turned into a half machine, half human hero. Getting granted powers renews his purpose in life. However, how does it all come together when he's set on a collision course with a similarly empowered sociopath? So the first thing that'll likely stick out to you is the uncommon protagonist. It's not too often we see an old man protagonist in anime, and overall, I really applaud Inuyashiki for its efforts to stick out. Despite the premise that I call simple and common, the show itself has some hidden depth for its viewers to uncover when it comes to themes regarding humanity and morality. Is it super unique? Well, not really, but you see the earnest effort there to connect with the viewers, especially with how the flow of the story goes. Don't let the plain premise dissuade you from watching this amazing title.